Hi, I'm Tom, and today we're talking wine and beer. I'm approached by friends all the time who are big beer drinkers. Nick, I'm talking to you, and who might struggle a little bit to get into wine necessarily. They don't necessarily know what wines to have at different times, and beer's always the easy option. Look, don't get me wrong, I love beer as well. So for all of my wine professionalism and all of that, a fair bit of beer gets drunk as well. But I wanted to run through really styles of wine that would work really nicely alongside classic styles of beer to maybe see if you can bridge the gap and jump into the world of wine as well. So beer number one, I think we'll talk lager. Lager, it's crisp, it's refreshing, it's quite citrusy, it's quite sort of simple in flavour, it's quite light and elegant, And I think the wines that fit very nicely with that, you're talking cool climate, light young Albarino, you could talk about Chablis, you could have things like Muscadet, just really easy drinking, light, crisp white wines. I think they'd do the same thing after work, in the sun, perfect. Moving up the sort of flavour spectrum a bit, we're going to talk pale ale. So something like I've got in my hand here. Pale ale is a bit maltier, it's a bit richer a little bit, it's got a bit more weight and depth to it. It's very hoppy and floral often as well though. So I think what you're looking at here is white wines still, but wines which are a bit riper and a bit fuller in style again. So things like Chenin Blanc from South Africa would be fantastic. Maybe sort of old world Sauvignon Blancs with a little bit of weight to them would be lovely. Viognier might be ideal. There's a lovely floral element to that, but it's got the weight and the sort of roundness that pale ale has in terms of comparison to lagers. Moving up the spectrum, proper night out, the booze is getting a bit higher. IPAs, Indian Pale Ales. These are a lot more alcoholic. There's, they're usually sort of 5.5, 6, maybe even 7, 8, 9%. Who knows? Sky's your limit. But they've got a lot more hops content. They're a lot more bitter. They're a lot more sort of packed full of flavour and aromatics. And so I think you need wines to match that too. If you are going to think about pairing wines that you could have instead of an IPA, maybe think Torrontés, something like that from Argentina, where it's got that lovely floral character and a bit more alcohol. You could think of White Riojas, Jovem White Riojas, where there's a nice floral character and the booze is there as well. And if you wanted to go rosé, if you went Provence, those flavours from Provençal rosés are lovely floral characteristics, are quite aromatic, but there's a nice weight and richness there again. So that could work very nicely. Moving up on richness again, we're going to talk about bitter. Bitter, I love it. I grew up in Lewes, so Harvey's Brewery, it was a big part of my childhood growing up, was always, I probably shouldn't say that, should I? But bitter has always been a key classic beer in the UK. And bitters, they're quite rich, they're quite earthy, they've got this slight sweetness to them and a sort of slightly nutty character going on. So I think if you're going to be tasting a bitter and you want a wine to match, perhaps something like a Pinot Noir, stepping into lighter styles of red wine. Zweigelt is an amazing great variety from out in Austria. That would be fab. Maybe even something like a Barbera from Piedmont, something like that, where there's a nice bit of body and richness, a little bit of sweetness from the fruit, and just that gentle, savoury, earthy character. Carrying on up the heaviness and the weight and the richness spectrum, stouts. Things like Guinness is the classic, isn't it? Something like that. A bit richer again. I think if you're going to pair wines alongside that kind of flavour profile, you probably want to step into slightly riper reds. Things like a classic Bordeaux blend, even from Bordeaux would be ideal. Chianti Classicos. Things that have got a bit of bitterness to them and a bit more body and structure to them. That would go really nicely. Finally, king of the heavy beers, surely, porters. Classically drunk with oysters alongside. I've never quite understood that pairing, but hey, why not? Give it a go. They're both great things. But porters, I think if you're going to pair wines with that, this is the bigger end of the spectrum. Porters are very cocoa-y and chocolatey and rich and nutty. So I think you want to be looking at Aglianico, a great Italian grape variety with loads of brooding, full-bodied character. Monastrell from the south of Spain, something like that. You could even think about going something like Primitivo from Puglia, something that's got real cocoa-y flavour characteristics and earthy richness. So that's my idea behind what wines might taste really nicely with your beers. If you're a particular beer drinker of a certain style, just try a couple of those wines that go alongside. The flavours aren't going to be identical, but they're going to do exactly what you want out of that beer in that same scenario. So good luck with it. Cheers. you.